And welcome back to City Chats. I'm Joyce Dooley. City Chats is a place where we talk to civic and community leaders, as well as industry partners and startup companies, all about what is happening in the smart cities industry. And today we're going to be talking about ramping up alongside digital transformation. The speed at which digital transformation is occurring within cities is alarming, and many are struggling to keep up with the pace. But the troubles with transformation don't stop at the rate in which these new solutions are being deployed, but also in the talent required to maintain them. So today we have the City of Sioux Falls Director of Innovation and Technology, Mike Grigsby, to help us talk about all things digital. Mike, how are you today?
Joyce, I'm great. Happy Friday to you.
Happy Friday to you. So before we dive in, I really want to, know what keeps you passionate about the work that you do.
I think if I had to put it into one word, I would say change. I love change. I love seeing how things evolve. I love seeing what they become, what they turn into. Being in the technology world, things are changing every day, if not hour by hour. And so I think the change is just what drives me, and looking for new opportunities. Certainly new and emerging technologies is always fun. I think the irony is it contrasts with my personal life, where I have this kind of set it and forget it attitude, where let's just do it once. I still got clothes that I have from high school. So I love the change on the personal side and on the professional side, and just seeing what everything can become.
That's really wonderful. Yeah, what everything can become, because I think the goal is to find the things that are force multipliers, right? Not just the one-off solutions, but the things that have the potential to grow into even more amazing things. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit further along. But the last couple of years have been challenging for everybody as we kind of struggled to manage chaos in a lot of different ways and transition and pivot. But what are some of the projects that is slated for Sioux Falls this year, given light of all the things?
Yeah. I came and onto the city. I joined the city in April of 2020. So right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it's been, that was more challenging than I thought it was going to be. But every organization was making all kinds of pivots then. The city had just launched WebEx for our virtual collaboration, and that was a challenge. We got it in, we got it up, we got it running, but now we're having to kind of untangle that, because we have, it's now production, and we thought it was going to be kind of maybe a simple temporary solution, but now it's production, and we've gained the benefits of it, and we've got to unpack that now. We've got to put policy around it or strategy around it. And so projects like that are really what's on the horizon for us this year. We have some other ones. We're doing a complete website revamp. Happy to see that take shape. The cybersecurity, certainly with everything going on in the world right now, cybersecurity is has a huge profile for us. And so we've got some initiatives going there, as well as, smart city stuff. We're looking at some LED streetlights. We're looking at cameras, Wi-Fi on buses, our transit systems. And these aren't anything new. These kind of projects have been around for a long time. A lot of cities have done them. What I think is really interesting is Sioux Falls has been very pragmatic in its approach over the last several years. And so as we are doing this, as we're implementing these kinds of projects, we have what I'll call meta projects. So these are the projects that go around it. And these are things that are like addressing our culture. We are doing things like we're spending a lot of intentionality around helping everybody within the organization be on the same page. We just concluded 5 different sessions with our department leaders and our community leaders, where we talked about things like construction and economic development and public health and libraries and parks and rec and public safety. A lot of our city leaders, mid-management levels, they didn't understand. They didn't really have an understanding of what it takes to build a city. Our city is in hyper growth mode right now. And so what does it mean to open up a new land acquisition? What does it mean to have new sewers? What does that mean? And how does technology play on that? And so being able to get everybody on the same team on the same page at the same time, I think is really important. It's challenging when we don't know what the other side is doing, and then we get pulled into these conversations later on in the game. So those kinds of things are just as important as the technology project. And in fact, I think that's what makes those technology projects a success later on.
Yeah, no doubt. Definitely that collaboration, like pulling people in from the beginning. And I think we're going to touch on that a little bit more in detail later on in the conversation. Previously you had said that digital transformation is one of the things that keeps you up at night. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
I think, I think it was last year, I think in 2020, or I'm sorry, in 2020, World Economic Forum had put out a report that said between 2020 and 2025, 85 million jobs were going to be disrupted or disappear. That's known job title, known job description, solving known problems. In the same time frame, 2020 to 2025, 97 million new jobs were going to be created. That's new job titles, new job descriptions, solving unknown problems. And those 85 million that are going to be disrupted or displaced can't automatically satisfy the need on those 97 million jobs. So we're in a tremendous deficit over the next several years to find the talent that we need to go into these. And one of the biggest places, biggest domains for those new jobs is going to be in the technology space. And it's interesting when you talk about technology, people automatically think about, somebody in the back room pounding out code, or they think about managing servers and networks and things like that. Technology has become such a broad domain that the idea of people managing applications and being kind of a digital resource coordinator as opposed to an IT person, I think that's going to be the biggest challenge. And the scope and rate at which this change is happening within our organizations, we're almost stretching faster than we can adapt to it. And the challenges behind it is in policy. The challenges behind it is in procedures and legislation, right? Especially at the municipal level, or certainly in the public sector. Those policies aren't keeping pace with the change. And so people are having to color outside the lines a lot, and it's creating a lot of challenges. We used to worry about shadow IT and people doing stuff out on the periphery of us without understanding. The force and kind of the impact of this change that digital transformation is bringing is causing a lot of people to color outside the lines way, way, way beyond what we had anticipated or what we considered, or even what we set up. So our environments are needing to be very, very flexible at a scope and pace that I don't know that we really anticipated.
Yeah, that is daunting, and I can definitely see why that would kind of leave you restless at night. To kind of build off of that, the amount of digital overhead that exists now means that you have a real need for increased digital literacy among the workforce. What are your thoughts on that?
We've talked about digital literacy for several years. In fact, I chair the city's digital equity and inclusion coalition, I guess if you would call it. But I think with respect to what we're talking about, digital literacy might not be the right phrase to use. I might even shift it and call it digital dexterity. And I know that sounds
okay.
It sounds like a buzzword, right? That's going to be the title of my next book is Digital Dexterity, right? I think digital dexterity speaks to it a little bit more, right? It's 2022. By and large, most everybody is familiar enough with technology to at least attempt to use it. They can try to use it. They can try to fumble on their smartphone. They can try to send an email. Most people today have had some interaction with technology. So it's not just becoming literate like they've never seen this before. I think the challenge, though, is how do you use it proficiently? How do you use it to actually accomplish your day-to-day tasks? The city recently put out a survey here, and we found out from our respondents that almost 90% of people feel that they can accomplish their daily tasks on a cell phone. Now, if you're trying to fill out an application for a job, or you're trying to fill out an application for housing or things along those lines, government subsistence, you may be more challenged to do that on a cell phone than you are on, say, a laptop or maybe even a tablet. But the fact that people think that they can do or feel that they can do 90% of their daily tasks on a cell phone, I think is something that we really need to pay attention to. And to that digital dexterity, how does that translate to different ways, different approaches that we're going to deliver content? right? Am I now, as an organization, am I now making sure that all of my job applications are have a mobile first approach to them? I don't know. I think it was interesting that, the FCC's Affordable Connectivity Program, which is a huge benefit to people that are in this digital divide, that it requires them to fill an online application. There's a little bit of irony in that. And I don't think that was done intentionally or without sensitivity. I think it's just an understanding or misunderstanding of the real need that's out there and the real lack of access that people have. I'll give you, I guess, kind of another example with regard to digital literacy or digital dexterity. In our organization last year, we had a gentleman that had been promoted. He had been with the organization for over 20 years. And his job as a field operator never really required him to have interaction or a lot of dealings with the technology within the organization. But on day one, as a supervisor, he now has to make sure that he has access to email. Our WebEx, our collaboration portal is all, our annual evals or performance evaluations are all online. Like, there's digital overhead to his job that he may not have even considered when applying for the supervisory job. So that's an example of digital literacy inside our own organization. And it's easy to think about that digital divide on a social economic impact, but we have it in our own organizations, and I think that's something that people really need to pay attention to.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. It's not just happening in your backyard, right? The call is coming from inside the house, I guess. It's a really great way to say that. And we have to do our best to respond to it, because I think you're right. And it's not going away, right? This problem isn't going to, I mean, if anything, it's going to only increase, right? As we become more and more reliant upon digital tools and services to accomplish our tasks and collaborations. It's a fact of life. And
honestly, Joyce, to the point that you're making is, not only is it not going away, but it's accelerating. Right. We are moving faster and deeper into a digital world. And, a lot of people can kind of get scared by that. The wish for days of, I remember when, the postcard and, get mail and do things that way. And had a gentleman just the other day talk about how he had to teach his 18-year-old who's applying for colleges and things like that, how he had to teach him how to fill out and properly address an envelope. Right? This is a skill that this young man has never had to do, and as he's reaching out for I guess funding or scholarships or things along those lines, that he's suddenly having to reach out in a way that is very foreign to him. Whereas conversely, back when I was growing up, the idea of doing everything online would have been equally as foreign. So I think that understanding that we're not only is it not going away, but we're going deeper and it's happening faster is something I think also that we should be paying attention to.
Yeah. So kind of building off of this, right? The last time we spoke, you kind of shared a quote that said, if you recognize something as a problem, but don't invest in it, it will be something you pay for.
Yeah.
You want to expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, I wish I could take credit as being the originator of that, but this comes from that quote comes from some friends of mine who do consulting for organizations and helping them change their culture. The way that they have said it is that you're going to have a culture no matter what, and if it's not one you invest in, it's going to be one that's going to cost you. So you're going to pay for it one way or another. But it's better to look at this from an investment standpoint and get a return on investment as opposed to being a complete loss. And we see this with a lot of different things that we're doing organizationally and trying to pay attention to kind of the long arc of things. And it's super challenging, right? Obviously, we're talking about culture, but any type of problem solving that you're trying to do, taking the time and being intentional about it, and making sure you're solving as many points of that problem as you can right now versus pushing anything down the road is going to pay huge dividends. Culturally speaking, if you're not being intentional about the development of your culture, you're absolutely going to get one. It may not be the one you want, but you're absolutely going to get a culture. And I think that's super important for awareness for leaders, But again, it's, you know, it's not like you're going to save money by not investing in culture, right? It is going to cost you, and especially if it's one that you allow to get away from you. Same thing with technology projects, right? If you don't do the necessary things up front, if you're not doing good project management, if you don't have a good adoption and success plan, if you don't have a good training and education plan, if you don't have a good digital dexterity plan as part of that technology initiative, it's absolutely going to cost you. And those things are way easier to address on the front end than they are on the back end.
Most definitely. Thank you for that. So we touched on earlier today the need to have external and internal stakeholders sort of collaborate at the very beginning of projects. And, in our last conversation, you had this concept of shared ownership, right? How important is shared ownership when looking at transformation and like true transformation within an organization or within a city?
Yeah, I think this concept, certainly the term has been around for a long time, but I think the concept of it is shifting a little bit, especially as digital transformation has even greater impact on organizations. And I'll give you a perfect example of this. So on my team, I oversee the information technology. It's one of the divisions that I oversee. And on that team, we have IT analysts that are supporting enterprise applications, and quite frankly, they're supporting all of the applications within the organization. Over time, all of these, or a lot of these applications, are no longer on-prem, or they're not housed internally within the organization. They're online applications, or what we call hosted or cloud hosted applications. Those applications don't require the same kind of care and feeding and expert level IT support that they did several years ago when they were on-prem. It's not that they don't require any support, they just don't require the same level. What they do require is somebody on the business side, somebody on the end user side that has true domain expertise on the business application of that piece of technology. And so the idea of this is, previously, IT had a lot of policies that would lock down permissions and access, that would funnel everything through IT, because the risks were high. You could get in there in the back end and you could mess something up. Right now, it's not the same. I don't want to make it sound like it's just, it's completely gone. But by and large, those risks are not there like they used to be. And we can turn over, we can empower our end users to really own and take full ownership of that system, because they're the ones that understand why it's being used. When you look at my IT analyst may not have any understanding of the business application, or why this is being used, or why this is configured in this way, because they don't understand that side of the business. But that end user who's within that respective department absolutely knows why they need it that way, because it's part of their work process and it's part of what they do to get work done for them. The challenge becomes, and this is where the shared ownership side comes, these early conversations we've had have been around, well, why am I doing IT's job? That's no longer not supposed to be my job. That's supposed to be IT's job. Well, why am I doing IT's job? How come IT's not in there doing this? Or vice versa. Why is IT having to become the business analyst? Why am I doing their job versus that? And there's tension in these early conversations around that, and being able to kind of tease those apart and understand roles and responsibilities. What am I really responsible for? What am I really accountable for? What do I need to just be consulted on? What do I need to be informed on? Those are the kinds of things that should really be at the kind of the center of our conversations now, because this is going to happen more and more and more as technology becomes more, what I'll just say, commoditized and allowed to come out to different end users. Another challenge on that would be, so HR now needs to be thinking about job descriptions that add digital resource coordinator as part of other duties as assigned, right? If you didn't know that you were going to be responsible for this application prior to that, and that's not a specific job title, how are you getting to know about that, or when do you get to find out about that? And it's a challenge. Do we now need to compensate you differently because you are a technologist as part of this job, or is that just kind of part and parcel with the job title that we've had for the last 40 years? I don't know. These are good questions. And like I said, it's the tension that's there. And this digital transformation is really prompting a lot of discussion around what does work look like? What should work? What should work be? How should work get done? And this is a lot of the conversation around, you've heard the term, the future of work. So
Yeah.
digital transformation is prompting a lot of that.
Yeah. I mean, the IT OT mashups that are occurring, and getting entangled is definitely like, do you have separate departments? Do you combine your departments? How do you, write your job descriptions as you're talking about? How do you compensate people for that? And it is shifting, and it is becoming a lot more complex and integrated. And again, it's something that will just continue to be happening. So it's definitely should be top of mind for people who are trying to set strategic goals, I think, within their organizations and how they want to grow and manage that growth. For sure. Well, I have one last question for you. Talking about, digital transformation, we can't leave out the citizens, right? So previously you had mentioned digital citizenry. So let's dig into that a little bit more and see how relevant it is within cities.
This was a term I remember, I want to say maybe 1995, somewhere around
Ooh.
we learned about this netiquette and this digital citizenry, and how do we become good digital citizens. And it sounded good, but it was mostly science fiction back then. But it's become a reality now, is that our identities are online, our digital identities, our digital behaviors are all captured. I mean, look at, just kind of the role of, or not the role, but the incidents that celebrities find themselves in, right? All of that stuff is captured. All of this, I tell my staff all the time, everything is discoverable, right? You're creating a digital record, everything is discoverable. And what does that mean? How does that change my behaviors? How does that change my engagement level? And I think that's one that we should also talk about. How do I engage? We have more information at our fingertips, access to more information now than ever before. And we're still not as engaged as we could. So is it the fact that, is it just the information? Is it more? Is there something else behind it? Is there something that I'm leaving out? How do we also bring together disparate groups, right? How do we create a homogenous group within the city that's made up of all these eclectic groups, right? I think that's the challenge, and I'm being way theoretical about this right now, but I think it does come into play when we start to look at how does this impact elections? How does this impact initiatives? How do citizens step up and understand what's going on in their city? The other side to this too is, if you come into a city, if you just move to a city because for whatever reason, a new job, or you just decided you like that city, where does a resident go to find out all the do's and don'ts of the city? If you and your significant other are at Lowe's or Home Depot and deciding that you want to get buy a shed to put in your backyard, where do you find out that you do or don't need a permit for that? What are the requirements? Is it the sales rep? Are they going to know about it, or other things like that? And maybe, the sad thing is that, unfortunately, a lot of times the first contact that people have with a city, certainly as a new citizen, is either through law enforcement or code enforcement, or they have violated something, right? They have to go pay a tax, or they have to go pay a fine or a penalty. And that's usually the first time that they have interaction. How do we help citizens and residents understand how to be good, not just law-abiding, but good contributing residents to their communities? And so this is way, we don't have enough time to unpack all of that, but it's good dialogue that we should be thinking about. And how do we, the city of Boston has a great phrase that they took and kind of, it was a mantra around their new website that they built. And it was, be a helpful human first and be equal parts warm and official. And I think if we, as certainly in the public sector, if we can adopt that kind of mindset, that kind of attitude, I think we would get, not only just move the needle on a lot of things, but I think we would create wonderful experiences for residents and prompt further engagement from that.
Man, great stuff, Mike. Thank you so much for your time today. I think this has been a really great discussion, and very enlightening too. Like, that there is some hidden costs to the digital transformation that we're finding ourselves in, that we maybe need to invest in a little bit more areas, and culture is still relevant to what we want to see moving forward. So thank you very much.
Very much.
Um,
No, Joyce, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, and for everybody else, thank you for tuning in today. We really appreciate having you join us. And stay tuned, because our next episode will be featuring Ruth B. Clark with IDC, and we're going to be talking about all things transportation. So with that, everybody have a great day.